Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us this morning. I want to begin by recognizing we're on the traditional territory of the Songhees and Esquimalt people and thank them for the ability to meet on their land. As you know, the Labour Force Survey is out this morning from Statistics Canada. We've all seen the evidence around us that COVID-19 is affecting every sector of our economy, which is, of course, powered by people. This survey is another stark reminder of the challenges that we're facing. I mentioned when I presented the numbers in March that we expected the numbers would be worse in April. And as predicted, today's data shows a staggering number of people are feeling the economic impacts of COVID-19. The job stats give us a clearer picture of the severe impacts we're seeing on people and our economy. During the month of April, BC's unemployment rate was 11.5%. That's the result of 264,100 jobs being lost, an unprecedented number. If we look at the total impact of COVID-19 in March and April, we lost 396,500 jobs. And let's remember, those jobs are people, their families, their businesses who've been impacted severely. This is an incredible jump from before the pandemic, when our unemployment number in British Columbia was just 5%, leading the country when it came to employment. And the numbers today, in fact, aren't the full picture, because many of those who lost employment are counted as not in the labor force, rather than unemployed, because they wanted work, but they didn't look for work because of the lack of opportunities right now because of COVID-19. We also see from the numbers released today that the sectors most impacted in British Columbia were accommodation and food services and wholesale and retail trade. In total, 47% of the job losses we saw in March and April combined were in these sectors. All of this is why we launched our COVID-19 action plan to support people and businesses. It's why we're working hard to get supports to people whose jobs have been affected. It was just 1 week ago today that we launched our BC Emergency Benefit for workers, a $1,000 one-time tax-free payment for people who've lost employment because of the pandemic. Since then, we've processed and approved more than 400,000 applications. The majority of these payments are already in people's bank accounts. The BC Benefit for Workers is a critical enhancement to the federal program and supports that are also available to British Columbians. And I know from people that I've talked to that these benefits are a huge relief and much needed right now. I want to encourage all British Columbians to explore the benefits that may be available to them, from income supports to commercial and residential rent relief, through tax cuts and tax delays, and bill payment deferments. People can find those benefits at gov.bc.ca/COVID government benefits. The personal and economic pain that COVID-19 has caused across the world really is unprecedented in our lifetime. But we are starting to see that there is some light at the end of the tunnel. We have a plan, as you know, presented by the Premier this week for a gradual, cautious lifting of restrictions under the direction, of course, of our Provincial Health Officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry, and with participation by various businesses and business sectors. I want to say a huge thank you to all those businesses and to those sectors who are getting ready for that gradual restart, who are doing their work now that will help get many British Columbians back to work. Recognizing our province's strong economic fundamentals, we are going to work for a safe rebound for British Columbia. And that will only happen with everyone's cooperation and confidence. We know people pulled together to be able to fight COVID-19. And I know that same spirit that I've seen in British Columbians fighting COVID-19 is going to help us with the economic recovery on the other side as well. So thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. As a reminder to everybody on the phone, please press *1 to enter the queue. You are limited to one question. We will take follow-ups if time permits. Please also unmute your phones. You will not be audible until I call your name. First question is from Vaughn Palmer, Vancouver Sun.
Good day, Minister. Is this the worst of it? And when do we start hearing some details about the $1.5 billion you've put aside for the economic recovery plan, please?
Is this the worst of it? I think is the question everyone will be asking. And I certainly don't have a crystal ball, I'm afraid. But I think now that we've started our gradual restart on the economy, we will be watching very carefully the months of May and June. I think they'll be key to see as businesses start up, as we start seeing people hopefully going back to being employed. We'll have a better sense of what we're looking at. That is also part of the reason we'll be reviewing all of our deferrals and programs and services as well to see what kind of growth we're going to see during those months. I think we've got a hard road ahead. I don't want to sugarcoat this. I think it's going to be a challenging road ahead. But I'm also confident that with the work that's happening, with the work we're seeing around the restart and the way businesses are stepping up to the plate and sectors, business sectors stepping up to the plate, I'm confident that we're going to see some very strong work and start to see that recovery occur. On the 1.5 billion, again, we're waiting to see data because it will be important to look both broadly at the entire economy and the challenges we're facing the entire economy, what kinds of impacts we're seeing around the globe, because obviously British Columbia is a small open economy. We are impacted by what happens globally, what happens to trade, whether we still see travel restrictions. Those all have an impact on British Columbia. So spending of that 1.5 billion will depend on the kind of work that needs to happen sector by sector and in a broad way across British Columbia. So those discussions are ongoing. Ministers are meeting with their sectors to get ideas and to bring those ideas forward. And I expect you'll see that work go on over the summertime.
Next question is from Lisa Houston, News 1130.
Minister, I'm wondering if you can quantify just how bad these numbers are butted up against the history of British Columbia.
Well, as I mentioned, we were at 5% unemployment when we were bringing our budget in. The numbers were looking good. We were leading the country at this point. So to see just in a short time period from February to now, to see a drop in jobs, people working, I think is staggering. 11.5% compared to 5% in February. I think those are staggering numbers. Canada's employment numbers, again, 13% unemployment for the country. So this is not unique to British Columbia. These are numbers across the country that we're seeing. But I think, as I said earlier, we have to remember that these are individuals who aren't working. These are businesses who have shut down. These are families who are struggling to get by. So it is critical that we do the work, as I said, around a gradual restart of the economy, because the most important thing continues to be that we fight the COVID-19, that we fight the pandemic, that we keep our numbers on our curve going down. That's going to build confidence for businesses. It's going to build confidence for the population. And so that continues to be the important work. It's why you're seeing a gradual restart as part of the plan that the Premier presented this week.
Next question is from Tanya Fletcher, CBC.
Hi, Minister. Just a bit of a two-parter here. So first of all, looking at half the job losses were in food and retail, do you foresee a quick rebound with those workers getting rehired, or are those sectors going to see, do you think, a long-term drag on employment numbers? And kind of related to that, how concerned are you that some businesses in accommodation and restaurants are not reopening and the negative impact that might have on the tourism sector restarting?
Well, I do think, obviously, because those sectors are impacted and cover, as you mentioned, the large percentage of the job loss, they obviously are going to have a big impact. But I also know you've seen the restaurant sector step up to the plate. They are talking about putting their own plan together. They've been working on it now for a week or so. And so they'll be bringing that forward. So they're providing incredible support to restaurants and retail across the province. So I do expect you'll see that a number of businesses will open. But again, that'll be up to the individual businesses to take a look at their sector plan, to take a look at how they can meet that plan within their own business and make those calls as individual businesses. So that's why we say it's a gradual approach. You're not going to flick a switch and see all the restaurants open across the province. Each of them are going to have to make their own business decisions and their own health decisions, most importantly, around how they can follow the guidelines, follow the sector plan, and open in a safe way, because that's going to be critical for confidence for people to start going to those restaurants and businesses and rebuilding the economy.
Next, we have Lisa Cordasco, CHLY.
Thank you. Good morning, Minister. Thanks for taking my question. I'd like to explore with you the idea of how much power or influence or effect can that $1.5 billion have? Because a lot of these factors, in a way, are out of your control, especially areas I think about tourism and international travel. That's probably not going to happen for at least another year. And there may be, other factors that you really can't control. So I guess I'm wondering what can you control and what are you looking at to influence?
Well, there's no question that that COVID-19 has had an impact across the globe, across the country, and the stats we see today, across the provinces, but in fact, across the globe when it comes to impact. And as you point out, there are many areas international travel is not likely to pick up anytime soon. That's going to have an impact on British Columbia. But there are areas, youth employment, for example. We will be looking at everything from skills training. Do we invest in that area for youth who are unemployed, who may want to look at employment in other sectors, or this may be a good opportunity to be able to finish off their apprenticeship and trades program or get some additional supports? Are there people who could be retrained from one sector to another to provide them with employment? So we'll be looking at all those opportunities and talking with sectors and the broad business community and labor community and First Nations community and not-for-profit sector. Everybody's impacted. We will need all of those ideas to be able to put together. So yes, there's no question there are outside factors that we don't control, but how we manage that within British Columbia is within our control, and that is what we will be looking at.
Next question is from Richard Zisman, Global News.
Minister James, we're hearing from a number of businesses, mainly in the phase 3 category, that believe that they could operate now at sort of a smaller scale in terms of distancing, and if there would be some options there, they could get people back to work. Should there be thought given on a wider range of business by business rather than just based on industry? One I'm thinking of specifically is a smaller gym compared to some of the larger gyms that Dr. Henry describes as being in phase 3.
Well, I think we have to remember that the phases and the approach put together was put together with science, with Dr. Henry, with WorkSafe to be able to make sure that we were providing the safest way to be able to reopen. So I'm sure some of those conversations will be discussed through the sectors. I'm sure some of those conversations will happen with WorkSafe when the sector plans are put together and a business can look and say, I can meet these requirements. Is it possible for us to go ahead? I expect that we'll be having those conversations through WorkSafe and through the health officer as well.
Next is Les Lane, Times columnist.
Oh, thanks. Across Canada, Minister, how do you assess the damage in BC relative to other provinces? The COVID hit harder in other areas, obviously, but the restrictions and measurements were kind of more or less the same across Canada. Is BC getting weathering this better than others, or are we in the same boat?
If you look at the numbers that came out today, everyone really is in this boat together. Yes, there are a couple of provinces that have higher unemployment numbers than British Columbia, Quebec, for example, Newfoundland, but in fact, all of the provinces really have been hit. All of the provinces are impacted. There isn't an outlier, for example, in any of these. And I think that has to do with the fact that we've all gone through this together. Yes, the restrictions varied from province to province, but in fact, all of the provinces are feeling the impact of COVID-19. And again, that'll be important to share some of the work that's being done across the country. I know the Premier is having those conversations with his counterparts across the country, finance ministers as well, so we can share the kinds of things we're looking at and the kinds of opportunities that are there between provinces as well.
Next question is from Jeremy Hainsworth, Business in Vancouver.
Good morning, Minister. Thank you for doing this. I'm wondering, with all of these people out of work and not paying income taxes, businesses closed, no sales taxes coming in, things like tourism impacting money that's coming into the province and going in taxes, what is the impact going to be on the government pocketbook cumulatively? Have you had any looks at that?
It's early going yet. There is no question it will have an impact on obviously the growth of our economy, our debt to GDP numbers. Growth projections are dropping, as you may have seen through the private sector forecasters. They have been predicting drops in anywhere from 4% to 7% when it comes to economic growth in British Columbia. So we're continuing to gather that data. We will have, of course, the first quarterly report coming out at the end of the summer. That really will be our first full report out on the situation we're seeing. But there is no question that's going to have an impact on our province's economy. It's going to have an impact on the budget. And I expect that's going to not be a short-term impact. That's going to be a longer-term impact as well.
Rob Shaw.
Minister, the opposition Liberals sent a letter to the Premier suggesting we pause the PSC, the hotel tax and the employer health tax for the next 3 months to stimulate consumer spending. Are you considering this, and to what extent do you think that would help?
Well, in fact, we've deferred a number of tax payments, the employer's health tax, PST payments, the carbon tax. We've deferred those until October 1st, so businesses don't have to pay those taxes until October 1st. We've been asked if we'll review that, and we certainly will over the summertime to see what kind of pickup you see in economic recovery and whether businesses are moving ahead. As I said earlier, we're going to take in everybody's ideas, so I appreciate the opposition leader coming forward with ideas. We're going to be talking to all British Columbians about ideas to grow our economy, because this is going to be, as we can see from these numbers, these are unprecedented times, and this is going to be a major piece of work to be able to look at turning the economy around, not only in British Columbia but across the country. So I appreciated the ideas coming forward. I look forward to more discussion on all of these pieces, but those deferrals are in place now until October 1st.
Binder Sudgeon, CTV.
Sir, keep hearing from people who feel like they're falling through the cracks. I'm just wondering if there is some sort of a process for them, someone they could contact if they feel like they have fallen through the cracks.
In every program, there are going to be people who may not fit one program or another. What we've tried to do with our COVID-19 action plan is to make sure that we tried to fill gaps in the federal program. So as you know, the federal program, they put in their CERB benefit. We tried to look at providing support for people who have been receiving that benefit but needed a little bit more support. So we've tried to fill those gaps, but we're certainly continuing discussions with the public around areas that people feel that could be improved or could be adjusted. So we haven't shut the door to that. We're continuing to look at that. So I'm receiving those concerns and receiving those questions now.
Next question is from Colton Davies, Radio NL.
Hi, Minister. Another tourism-related question. Are there any plans for any specific stimulus fund from government for the tourism industry? I ask because, of course, the Thompson Okanagan, so many businesses here rely on international travelers and visitors from Alberta and the Lower Mainland, and it appears the message for the foreseeable future for domestic travelers is going to be to stay close to home. So will there be anything unique for support for tourism in the Southern Interior? And from a business standpoint, generally speaking, will tourism season be lost, in your opinion, for this summer? Thank you.
Well, as you know, my other hat, of course, is the MLA in Victoria, which is a large tourism community. So I hear about that firsthand. I can see it in my own community, the impact that we're facing and that we're going to face for a while. This is part of the discussion, as we talked about earlier, on the $1.5 billion for economic recovery. We are looking at sectors. We are listening to the sectors. Ministers are meeting with their sectors and bringing those ideas forward. So that's part of the ongoing discussion that's happening right now. I don't think it's going to be an easy road ahead over the next year. Certainly with international travel, it looks like not coming back over this next year. That's going to be a real challenge. But there are discussions about local tourism programs and opportunities for people in their own communities who may not have gone out and visited local areas in their own home communities. So we will be having discussions with the tourism sector, and I expect there'll be pieces and recommendations coming forward for discussion.
Saida, CBC Radio Canada.
The recovery might be long. You mentioned it, Minister. What measures for those who were already looking for a job before the crisis and might feel discouraged now?
Well, I think that is a challenge. There's no question about it. It's part of, as I said, why these numbers don't really show the whole picture, because there are people who, in fact, have stopped looking for work because their sector has been completely shut down, or the area that they're trained in has been completely shut down. I think the economic restart, the gradual restart, hopefully will help. I think the next couple of months will be key to watch, certainly May and June and into July, to see as businesses start to reopen, whether you see those employees coming back and what kind of impact that has on the numbers. So this really will be a watch and see. You know, as we use the word unprecedented a lot, but it's hard to find another descriptor for what we're going through as a globe, not simply as a province, but as a country and as a globe, when it comes to the impact of these kinds of job numbers, when it comes to the impact of this kind of shutdown over a very short period of time. Unemployment usually is a gradual shift. These numbers really are staggering.
Next question is from Bob Mackin, Breaker News.
Hi, good morning. Crown corporations such as BCLC, PAVCO, and Destination BC would have been hit hard, and they face a steep recovery. So what is government doing to keep these Crown corporations afloat, and will you look at cutbacks for CEO compensation in the public sector?
Again, when it comes to the Crowns, each of the ministers will be having those discussions. You mentioned a couple. They're obvious. Obviously, the lotteries, if you're not seeing casinos open and you're not seeing that business open, that's going to have a big impact, obviously, on lotteries and dollars coming into government, not simply an impact on the Crown Corporation, but an impact on the bottom line. So that'll all be part of our review around the economy and as a whole, and the first quarterly report, and what kinds of measures government needs to take. So still in discussion.
Albert Sioux, Fairchild TV.
Minister, I want to know the ethics media suffers a lot because of losing advertisement during this time. And will BC government put more money to buy advertisement in ethics media?
Well, again, I don't have a plan for media and ads that the government may be putting in. We will be looking, of course, at reminding people about the benefits that are in place. A lot of that is social media, so I can't speak to which portion goes in which media. But I recognize, as you point out, Albert, that there are challenges for media as well through this time period because of ad revenue and revenue for media as well.
Last question this morning is from Mary Griffin, Check News.
Oh, hi, Minister. Thanks so much. I'm just wondering, in speaking with so many small businesses that are really struggling, and when they are reopening, they're re-employing fewer people, and I'm just wondering if the province is planning on going ahead with its minimum wage hike.
Yes, we are. The minimum wage hike will move ahead. It is a piece that is important when you look at people who are low wage and to try and address the poverty issues that we face in British Columbia. We know the cost of living is high in our province, and so we feel it's important to continue with that plan. We did it, as you know, in a measured approach in partnership with business so that you wouldn't see a big jump. Part of the challenge, of course, with not moving ahead with small increases is that you end up with a big jump, and that's not good for business either. So small measured approach, and yes, we're moving ahead.
That's all the time we have this morning. Thank you very much.